everybody, welcome to Gardening TLC. We are back out in the shade gardening today, and we are going to do one last shade video for now underneath this big maple tree right here. Maple trees can be really tough to plant underneath because one, they have a really heavy shade canopy. Two, their roots are on the top of the surface and it's not good for the tree to cover them up, so I can't exactly build a berm. And three, they are hogs. They steal all the water, all the nutrients, and so it is challenging to garden underneath a maple tree. But let's talk about some solutions and some things that you can do in the design that we're going to do today. This is dreaded dry shade. Life is not easy for plants under a big mature tree. Look at all those roots. They have to squeeze their little bitty roots around all of those big roots. And look at the cracking of the soil. That's the tree sucking up all the moisture. Look how big this tree is. This tree is a red maple and it's probably 15 to 20 years old. Red maples have pretty big leaves. I can't bring a bunch of dirt in and put it on top and create a berm because the roots won't like that. I can bring a little bit, but I have to solve this problem. So if I were to talk long term, what it is that I want to do back here is I do want to connect this back bed right here with this bed that I have right here and kind of bring it and swing it around. But then as you can see here, I have this berm right here that makes my house higher than the rest of my property. And I do have more maples that line it. That's what provides all that beautiful shade that I have in that bed right there. This is southern exposure, but it's really dappled shade up here with all the trees. And as you can see, I have really hard time getting anything to grow underneath these maples because they're big leaf maples. One of them is a Crimson King, the other two are reds, and the one on the end is a sugar maple. So it's great for the shade, but not so great for growing things underneath. Eventually, I'd like to landscape on this side of the sidewalk all the way down, but I'll have to develop that over time because I've already got 3 beds that I want to do this year, and I don't know that I can do another one. It's not in the budget. And so even though I'm going to show you this one, this might be next year's bed, and I might change my mind between now and then as I ponder and think about it. But this is one that I definitely need to tackle because the ground where the grass was kind of, sort of, but not really, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So we're going to have to do something about it, or it's just going to be big old dirt lands blowing dust all over the place in July and August. The first thing I'm going to do is define the area that I'm going to actually plant in. And for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to plant around the tree. Now, I am going to bring in some boulders to break up some of the area because it is a fairly large dirt land area underneath that tree. And I want some interest, and I want to be able to create little vignettes, and I want to be able to cover up some of the roots and have something that can go on top of them. So if the roots are growing, they're moving, these boulders aren't going to make that big of a deal, but they'll look nice in there and they'll take up some real estate, and that's good too. Now, the other thing is when I choose plants to grow in the shade, I need to find plants that can handle more dry conditions. So I'm not going to be putting astilbes and things that want water because guess what? I'm just going to be constantly struggling with those. So I need to find things that can handle the competition. Now, when I'm putting my stuff in, I want to try and find the smallest things I can find. So if I can find quartz or even plugs or things that are fairly small so I can disturb the roots as little as possible, that's what I'm going for. Because yeah, I can back prune a few roots, but I really don't want to start whacking away at all of the roots because that really can damage your tree. And you might not see that like right away. You might start to see decline in your tree later down the road, but I am going to plant 3 shrubs in here. But the further away I get from the base of the tree, the more space I'm going to have to be able to plant in. And my tree's not 50 years old. My tree is only 15 to 20 years old. So I do have some give there where that gives me some an advantage because my tree is still kind of young. So I am going to put in 3 oakleaf hydrangeas because they actually are a little more drought tolerant. They can handle being in like a woodland garden setting, and they are good underneath deciduous trees. They can actually handle the competition. Now I'm going to look for like little 1 gallon. I'll be amazed if I can find those. Probably 2 gallon is when I'm going to be able to find the smallest. But once you take this out of the can and you really knock a lot of the dirt out and then you spread the roots, you'll be amazed at how small that root ball actually becomes when you're trying to put it in. Now, oakleaf hydrangeas bloom on old wood, and so I'll have these up as winter interest. And you can see in the other bed along the edge there, I do have 3 viburnums planted, and then I have the red knockout roses. So I think the color palette of this will blend in well. They age to pink, but then they have like kind of a reddish color to them. And the foliage turns like a really super dark mahogany in the fall. Really absolutely beautiful. Now, these can get up to 5 feet wide, but I think in this particular instance, underneath this tree, they'll probably end up being like 4 by 4, which is a good size. And it kind of gives me a height right there that will be on either side of the path if I leave that grass path to go up in between the 2 beds. If I ever decide to join them, I'll still have a path there. So it kind of hides what's in my bed a little bit by creating that height. These will grow in partial shade to partial sun, but I'm going to try these here, see how they do. I've had really good luck with oak leaf hydrangeas in the shade, and I think these will be fabulous. This is a great representation of what one of them looks like. And if I didn't say, this is the ruby slippers. And so in the oak leaf family, this is actually a pretty small one. Another shade-loving plant that tolerates dry soil is lungwort or pulmonaria. These guys have really tough leaves. They do really well in dry shade. In the spring, they produce bright blue, pink, white, or purple flowers. Most of the time, the leaves are elongated and they're splotched, although there is one called Samurai where it's all silver, and there's another cultivar that's all green, but I would plant like a splotchy one like a Pink a Blue by Proven Winners, or maybe a Mrs. Moon or Bertram Anderson. Any of those are really super nice. Now, you can actually use this as a ground cover and put a lot of it in. I'm actually going to put it all in this corner. It's a little bit a ways from the tree, but as you walk by, you're going to be able to see that beautiful foliage. Now, you don't grow this one for flowers because guess what? Those flowers come and go so fast in the spring. It's a beautiful show when they're flowering because a lot of times it's kind of a two-tone color where the bud is one color and when it opens the flower is another. Most of them are going to grow in zone 2 through 8, somewhere in there, depending on the cultivar that you choose. Now, the one thing I will do in this bed is I am definitely going to rely on the design principle of quantity over variety. I am not going to be putting a whole bunch of different things in this bed. I'm going to actually choose 4 things and that's it. And those 4 things are all that's going to be in here besides the accent pieces that I put on top of the roots. So let's look at our next plant. Yep, that's right. I'm putting hostas in there, and there are so many to choose from. Now, I am not choosing a little hosta. I'm going to choose a fairly large hosta. This one is called Paul's Glory. I really super like it. But you know what? They are one of the most tried and true shade plants out there. They're low maintenance. There's hundreds of varieties. The foliage is diverse in size, shape, color. I can mix and match whatever it is that I want to do. And if I want to do smaller hostas, I can and do it like a ground cover. I just think that that's going to be way too much work. I want to do a hosta that I can tuck into the roots and then it's going to grow big because it doesn't have a super deep root system. It can handle being under there. Now, I'm going to talk about some watering tricks that will help you in just a little bit. But hostas, for the most part, you got zone 3 through 9. But let's take a look at Paul's Glory and what the specs are on that. I love the coloring on Paul's Glory. I just think this is such a pretty hosta. Now they can get up to 2 feet high and 3 to 4 feet wide, and they do grow in zone 3 through 8. Now I'm choosing a larger hosta because I probably am never going to get it full size. So I wanted to get at least half of its size, which would be 12 feet high by 2.5 to 3 feet wide, which is still a good size hosta in the garden because it does have to compete with the maple. Now I could run a soaker hose through here. I could run drip irrigation through here, but I don't know that that's the answer because I want these guys to be able to survive and compete alongside the maple tree without adding extra water using irrigation or drip line. So I'll talk about how I do it in my other bed and it works really well. And that's what I'm going to do in this bed too. So we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, I would be totally bad if I didn't talk about this perennial to put in dry shade. This is a ground cover and it's very underwhelming. And it is not flashy, but it is, ooh, can it handle being underneath dry shade? It is a geranium macrorhizum, or a big root geranium. It has super deeply lobed leaves that look like little snowflakes. The foliage on it is a little fuzzy, but it makes it very deer and rabbit resistant. And so if you just want to do a ground cover underneath your maple tree and skip any kind of design, this is what I would recommend. In the autumn, the leaves turn this beautiful shade of reddish brown. It's a semi-evergreen, so you don't have to cut it back. And the only thing that I would ever do would take a pair of shears to it when the flowers were done and clean it up by cutting off the spent foliage. They grow in zone 3 through 8. They get anywhere from 12 to 18 inches high, and one clump will get about 24 inches wide. The flowers are a pinky purple. And as I said, you don't have to cut it back. It is semi evergreen. You kind of just leave it up all winter long. So it gives you this nice ground cover outside underneath your tree. The other thing is it is a spreader. So over time, it's going to form a nice dense carpet of foliage. It spreads by a rhizome, and the rhizome on there is really thick, and that's what makes it so drought tolerant. So if you want something that's really dependable to grow in the shade, I would recommend this one. Skip the design and just put this in. Well, I am not skipping the design. I want beauty as well. So guess what I'm going to use for flower power? Yes, impatiens. I am not going to plant them in the ground though. I'm actually going to plant them in low Sedona bowls, just like I did right here in the bed that's up the hill along the sidewalk. See, isn't that pretty? I like the Beacon series because they are resistant to the downy mildew. And I like impatiens because I can change the colors out every year. If I want to be pink, I can be pink. If I want to be salmon, I can be salmon. If I want to be red, white, purple, whatever color I want to be, I can be, and change it out every single year. Now, one of the other reasons I like to use impatiens in those low Sedona bowls is because they have that nice, beautiful mounding habit. Now, you could probably put taller pots in here, but I kind of want the foliage to all kind of be interwoven together. And while I'm waiting for everything to grow up, I can add a couple extra bowls. I have tons of Sedona bowls, and I like to use them to move around to the different gardens while I'm waiting for things to fill in. Now, one of the things that I have found with any kind of gardening that I do underneath a tree, especially a maple, is sporadic watering or shallow watering is the very worst thing that you could ever do. On the other side of those knockout roses, which are right there behind the house, there is another red maple. And guess what? I've already planted that up and had practice doing this. Now, remember, I live in zone 5 and we get good rain here. In the spring, it's fairly wet, and through the summer, it rains pretty good. Now, every once in a while, we do go through a dry spell. But if you're in an area that you can't get water to it, you can't, you're only relying on the rain, then I would definitely go with the ground cover. Now, I will water this bed, but when I water it, I'm going to water it deeply less often. And I'm going to try to get 1.5 to 2 inches of water on it all in one sitting when it gets really super hot outside. And I'll tell you, these plants will stress a little bit. You'll see it. If they need water, you're going to know it. Now, the deep watering, what that does for you is it allows your tree to soak up water, but it gives your plants time to soak up water as well. I've been doing it this way for a while, and it works really well for me. But remember, the biggest thing you want to do when you're watering is know how long it's going to take to get that much water, because you might think it only takes 30 minutes and it might take longer. So what I do is I go get a pie dish or a Tupperware dish, something, take it outside. And when I put my sprinkler on, because, I got the old fashioned overhead sprinkler, I figure out how long does it take in that watering for me to get 2 inches in that dish. And then I know how long it's going to be. And then I can set it up on a timer if I need to do that. Or for me, I can just run back and forth because I work next door. Now, the other thing is when I'm watering in the shade, I try to water as early as possible, and I try to avoid the heat of the day. The heat of the day, you just lose a lot of water to evaporation. And in the morning is a good time to do it. Or if you can do it early enough that your foliage has time to dry, you really want to avoid putting your shade bed to bed wet. It doesn't like that. And then you're inviting all kinds of ickies into the garden, and you don't want that. So that's my trick for growing underneath the maple tree. Use dry, resistant stuff. And if you have to water, do it deeply. Okay, you guys, I think that's a wrap for the shade design series. We will circle back around to this when we start planting, and I'm sure I will be presented with some other opportunities to create some designs in the shade, which I will be happy to share with you. Stay tuned. Thursday, we are going to have our first installment of the What Would Michelle Do series, where we're actually going to talk about 2 different situations that are a challenge in the garden. The first one being planting a long, narrow border, which might only be 2 or 3 feet wide, in hot sun. And how do you plant around a well that's plunked right down in the middle of your yard? We're going to address that one as well, because I think a lot of people don't know what to do or how to plant around or in those situations. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. I am Michelle. Thanks for watching. And remember, if you plant a garden, it means you believe in tomorrow. We'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.